Incident response is one of the key topics in security. Given one valid attack can pretty much wipe out the most critical asset within your company, such as customer data, transaction records, etc. During the security incident response, there are a whole bunch of data that you need to look into as a security consultant, such as service logs, transaction records, etc. And it's a huge pressure during that time. And oftentimes, the security team actually conducted those investigations in panic mode. In this video, we are going to test using ChatGPT to prepare the security investigation environment, also using it to conduct the initial phase of the investigation. So now let's look into that. So what we show here is a very common scenario for the security team to conduct the incident response. Whenever there's something as an anomaly that's been found, and then the security team would can look into the Cloudtrail logs. And in this case, the Cloudtrail logs actually store in the S3 bucket. So we can use the Amazon Athena, which is a managed service from AWS, which can allow us to use the standard SQL query language to query the S3 bucket and investigate those Cloudtrail logs. One of the challenge here is that how can we use the SQL language efficiently so we can query the Athena in a timely manner. So this is where the ChatGPT can come in to help. We try to ask the right questions and try to see and test if the ChatGPT can provide prescriptive recommendations, step-by-steps, as well as those SQL language to query Athena. Now let's go into the console. Now we have the ChatGPT window open on the left and the AWS console open on the right. And now we are about to start to query the Cloudtrail, but assume that we are not familiar with the overall process. How can we do that? So the first question we have for ChatGPT is how to use Athena to query Cloudtrail trails stored in S3 bucket. I'm hoping ChatGPT will be able to provide a prescriptive step-by-step recommendation for how to set things up, how to do the integration using Athena to query the Cloudtrails, things like that. So now it's providing me with some documentations. Step 1, set up the AWS environment first. Okay, we need a S3 bucket. We already have that. Step 2, configure the Cloudtrail, making sure the Cloudtrail is configured to deliver the logs in S3 bucket. We also completed this step, looks good. Step 3, query the logs with Athena, and once you have set up your environment, configure your trail. Okay, and you can use Athena to query the logs. Now I think it basically provides us with this command to query. But the problem is that if we haven't set things up, for example, if we haven't set up the database where we are showing here on the Athena window, so if we haven't set up the database and also haven't set up the schema for the Athena, then Athena would not be able to start to query the Cloudtrail logs in the S3. So I think this will be something that's been missing. Can we just change another way to ask the question? So now we are trying to use a new query language to see if we can come up with a better result from the ChatGPT. Now we're asking how to create a database and table in Athena to query the Cloudtrail logs in S3 bucket. The whole idea is that we try to make it more specific and see if we can get a better answer. So we have got this response from ChatGPT, looks good, and it does provide step-by-step instructions here. So the first couple steps is that ask us to go to the AWS management console for the Athena and then start using the service. And then the third step is ask us to create a table. So we can create the table and as well as the database. Now we have the default database. We try to create the table here. We do see a button here. We click on the create button. There's an option here, create table. Let's see how it goes. So once we press the create table button, and Athena actually pre-populated this SQL command to create a table, which is not exactly the same compared with the result from ChatGPT. So assuming if you're not familiar with Athena and try to rely on ChatGPT to teach you how to create this database and tables so you can query those Cloudtrail logs, there will be a little bit challenge for you. So you might be getting confused as to what I were before. So, but if we try to compare, like using some of the search engine like Google to search this query, we can come up with these relevant links. And then if I follow one of these, and then such as this official documentation from AWS, I can set up the Athena table correctly that can allow me to query those Cloudtrail. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you can ask the specific question to ChatGPT, you are more likely to get the answer from it, I mean the right answer. But for some of the high level, especially architectural related question, it's better for you to have some, preliminary or even the previous context and knowledge about the service that you're going to use. So now we have set up the database and table in Athena. Let's try to ask the question for ChatGPT for how to proceed. The first question I have is, what are the common Athena queries to check anomaly behaviors within an account through Cloudtrail logs? Now we just have the result populated by the GPT, as you can see here. And the reason why I ask this question is I pretend to be a people that's not familiar with the Athena query and what can be done by this query. So the first couple things, as we can see, is that ChatGPT let us know we can list all the API calls made by a specific user in an account. I think this sounds reasonable, right? And it provides an example. This is exactly what we need. If we copy paste, and again, we need to, one thing to highlight here is that we need to always change this parameter to just for example, because we need to use our database and table that created in our Athena to query those Cloudtrail data. So if we paste it here and we need to change it to our setup, we actually create a table underneath our default database, and this is our table name. And where the identity name, we can put some name here. For example, my user, just check if there's a user called my user. So this shows there's no such a user called my user. So that's fine, and this is just for an example, and we can just keep rolling to the next query. Well, the next query that we can use is to identify all the AWS Management Console sign-in events that occurred outside of business hours. This is also very important, right? To see if we have malicious, such as malicious internal users that conducted this attack. So let's look into that. And again, we need to change our table name here. We just change that. Everything looks all right. So we can run the query, see what will happen. Query of this type are not supported. So this is a little bit weird because we haven't seen this feedback before, and Athena doesn't provide enough logs for us to do the troubleshooting, which is a little bit annoying. So I think what it tells us is that not every time when you execute the query that populated from the ChatGPT is actually working. So the next thing I want to show is we will simulate a malicious users that created attack. So if we go to the S3 bucket, here in S3 we can see there's a bucket called we stole your data, and there's a random serial number. And if we look at that, there's a one file, all your data belong to us. This sounds quite scary. And if we open the file, it actually just telling you, hey, your data has been hacked, and this is the money that you need to pay. So the hackers would just return your data and not releasing those data in the dark web. It's quite scary, right? But the first thing I want to ask the ChatGPT is really around who actually or what type of Cloudtrail activities that's related to a put object. which is related to this file that we just seen that has been created and put in the S3 bucket. So if we try to ask how to use Athena query Cloudtrail put object activity by providing a file name in the query, because we already have the file name that we just shown in the S3 bucket. So we try to find as much relevant information as possible related to the file that we found, and also the put object actions. So this is the query that come back from ChatGPT. Like, let's do a copy paste, and then we try to do it here. As usual, let's change the table name and put object. Yes. And then what about the file name? The file name was actually here. We just copy this and we change this part. This is just for example. Here. And try to run the query. Normally just take 1 or 2 seconds. Alright, now the query has been executed correctly, and we've got this answer. If we look into that, it actually provides the Cloudtrail log information, right? We can see the event version, user identity, and one of the key thing here is actually the event type, or actually the event time. It tells us when it happened. Event source is from S3 bucket. So the event name is very key, right? Put object tells us someone actually put the object in the S3 bucket. And here is the source IP address. We can check about this as well. And the other thing to note here is the user agent. Within here, if we look into the information, we would see there is it's actually executed by the Cloud Shell, right? So this might be the relevant service that we need to look into. And just keep rolling. This is a bucket name. Fine, we already know it. Just keep rolling the additional event data. So if we just keep rolling to the right, is there any further information that we can extract from it? Resource, great. So at least it tells us that if we ask a very specific question for ChatGPT, like what we did, how to use the Athena query Cloudtrail to put the object, right? And then by providing a file name, it can actually provide us with an executable query that we can put up those data. So this is very helpful from my perspective. The other thing I want to find out more is about the identity, because from the result that we just had, under the user identity column, we can find this I am user actually related to this put object actions. So now I'm curious about the other actions that might be conducted by this I am user. So let's ask ChatGPT again. How to use Athena query or Cloudtrail trails that are related to a specific user. Let's call it, just copy it, copy paste. Yes, it just come back with all this query, and similarly, we would copy that. We would paste it here. We would change the table name, right? And request parameter. So this is very key. This is a place that we need to copy the IAM username. This is within the request parameter section. So here is what we do. All right, it's already here. So run. Okay, so now it doesn't provide us with the any record, but if we look into that, it actually there's a AND clause here, and event name equals to create trail. So what about if we just remove this part, run it? The reason why we remove it is because we don't want to just filter out the create trail. We want to see all the activity related to this user. It seems like it's still not found. So the result, the query result is a little bit conflicting with our original impression, because we do have something related to this IM user that's been found out. So what if we just remove some of the clause to just lose some of the restriction here? For example, if we just remove this one, event source, cloudtrail.amazon.aws.com, and also remove the and. Let's just run the query again. We just try to have as much information as possible. Let's see. It actually gives us 12 results related to these IM users, right? And if we just scroll further, we can try to see some of the actions here. These are the event name, create user, attach user policy, create access keys, and yeah, this is very relevant information that we are actually looking at. So what I'm trying to test here is that whether or not we can directly copy this query language from the ChatGPT search result and then put it in our Athena query. And the result actually tells us that sometimes, it cannot be directly executed. You still need to make some of the fine-tuning at the detail level to make it work. In the test we just finished, we have tested to use ChatGPT to provide a prescriptive recommendation to set things up for using Athena to query the Cloudtrail logs. From my point of view, it's still very powerful tool which can provide us with a recommendation to set things up in your environment, and also can provide those query language that you can try to execute within your Athena. But the flip side is that we need to be mindful that it cannot replace all the human expertise. So it's still required for the security consultant in the incident response context to knowing a bit more about the security services that you're using, and also the best practice. More specifically, we'll be using the Athena to query the Cloudtrail in our case. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you find it helpful, please give it a like, and you're welcome to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.